Brand enemies can be an incredibly powerful tool for businesses to take advantage of, but not all are brave or bold enough to do it. So in today's video, we're going to be diving into how you can actually leverage enemies to make more effective marketing and head off into a bright and shiny, profit-filled horizon. So let's go ahead and get into things. Stories have the ability to create emotional connection, to mobilize people to take action, and to allow all of us to feel more connected as humans. And a foundational part of every story is an enemy or the antagonist. We need something or someone that is getting in the way of our hero, in this case, our customers, from achieving that bright and shiny future that they know is possible. So enemies add stakes. Enemies make anything that we're talking about have more urgency. So let's say that we are taking on the topic of sustainability and caring for the environment and concern about the future state of the world. So if we were to just say how important it is to recycle because of all the good things it does, it wouldn't have the same emotional resonance and the same urgency as it would if we talked about all of the things that are conspiring against this. So fast fashion and emissions and all of the things that are causing damage to the climate and to the environment are in some ways enemies that can be leveraged by brands that are very committed to sustainability. So that's just one example, but there are so many out there that you could pull from and that you can choose from no matter what you're selling. However, you need to be clear on what your values are and what you're committed to doing in order to also gain clarity about who your potential enemies may be. Now, I want to give you a very important caveat, which is that you want to be mindful of who you're calling out as an enemy and how you're calling them out. So we don't want to perpetuate hate. We don't want to create division between people. We don't want to actually take this to any aggressive extremes, but we do want to think about how we can use these concepts of uniting people around a shared mission as a way to be able to add additional depth and resonance to our marketing messages and to our missions as businesses. So they add urgency. They also strengthen our sense of identity. So if we know that we don't just care for these things, but we care for these things because of this other thing or in contrast to something else, then that just adds more strength and commitment to who we know that we are because we know who we're not. It also gives a sense of purpose. So we aren't simply saying that this is what we care about and this is what we do, but we now have a mission. We now have something that we are called to in order to try to make happen or fight against or envision a different type of future than what might be held as common belief. So one mistake that I see some people make when they are starting to get into this idea of brand enemies is assuming that enemies are competitors. Now, sometimes competitors can be the enemy. However, the enemy, as I mentioned, it doesn't even have to be a group of people. The enemy can be some other force in the world, or the enemy could be something that on the surface perhaps doesn't even feel related. So in the case of Liquid Death, one of their taglines, one of the hashtags that they use is death to plastic. Obviously, those are pretty strong words, but that's communicating that they have a very strong mission to not only innovate in the world of water, but that they are committed to reducing the waste created by traditional plastic water bottles. So they are made of aluminum cans, which are more recyclable than plastic. And so they have created this us versus them along the lines of the material used to actually package the products of their competitors. So there is some nuance there that has many layers, but it gives them something with teeth and something meaty that they can then use as an additional tool to be able to help further their cause, to help win over over customers and to help maintain that commitment as they continue to innovate in the world of water. So another example, and this is an example that is quite fun, is e.l.f. It stands for eyes, lips, and face. They are a low-cost beauty brand, and more recently, they have shifted their marketing in a very us versus them way, which e.l.f. is known for duping or copying, essentially, a lot of very popular, trendy, high-end makeup products that cost a lot of money. And so they, in some ways, in their more recent marketing, are essentially justifying why what they're doing isn't just to offer people what they already want at a lower cost, but essentially saying luxury makeup should be available to everyone. So in a way, kind of democratizing the world of beauty and making great, effective beauty products accessible and available to everyone. So there's a level of fighting against elitism and class, and also these evil, big beauty brands that are trying to steal from customers by making their prices unnecessarily high. All of that is embedded within e.l.f.'s marketing. And a great example of this was their spot in the Super Bowl, which let's just go ahead and let you watch a bit of that right now.
You're telling me you need to spend $92 on foundation? Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. I find you guilty of reckless spending and sentence you to $14 glowy skin.
Okay, just wait, stop. So what do I get?
So you see that they have brought in with this video a sense of humor. Of course, there's a lot that's going on in this ad. It's funny, but at the core of it is, I mean, how much clearer can it be that there is an enemy here? We have a court case. So we have the good guys against the bad guys, and they're really setting it up in this us versus them way that is quite effective and is a unique spin on positioning themselves in a way that they haven't previously. Now let's look at a different kind of brand enemy. This one is a little bit more subtle, and it is with a sustainable, slow fashion brand called, I believe you pronounce it cotton, but it's not spelled the same way. Now, what's really interesting about cotton when you look at their website is, as I mentioned, they talk about slow fashion. So even just using that language, slow fashion, is an us versus them choice in contrast to fast fashion, which is known to be very harmful to the environment and to the humans that are manufacturing those items. Ethically crafted, natural fibers, and then look at this, anti-fit denim. It's in the name of this particular denim design. Anti-fit, as in going against the traditional shape and style of denim, and it is saying that it is denim done better. The anti-fit denim meticulously engineered for the perfect fit and a cleaner production process. So we have an illusion that there is some antagonism here, but it's not fully clear when we see it on the homepage. However, when you click into it, you see that it's unisex. Denim to go against the grain, a relaxed, slightly balloon-shaped leg that defies gender rather than following old formulas of how jeans should fit. Our jeans were built to last in a recycled cotton blend crafted and indigo dyed safely without the traditional chemicals or toxic disposal techniques used. So we have a few enemies within one item of clothing on this company's page. So we have direct antagonism towards fast fashion, and it's talking about the toxic techniques and how wasteful they are. And then it's also talking about gender and body stereotypes and going against those conventional assumptions to create a denim that defies what the traditional norms dictate something should be. So we see a lot of conflict within this in a way that is very compelling to the people that would see this and think this is the denim that I want to go with. I want to go with denim that not only aligns with this set of values, but is going so strongly in favor of them that it is also saying who they are not. So these are both e.l.f. and Cotton do really effective jobs at clarifying and galvanizing both what they stand for and then making sure that they really live and breathe those values. But at the same time, in doing that and helping actually give clarity to who they are and who the customers are that they speak to, they are drawing definitive lines in the sand and saying who they are not. Another example is, as we've seen the rise of direct-to-consumer or D2C brands over the years, we hear over and over again, they're cutting out the middleman. All these middlemen are apparently very evil, according to all of these companies, but essentially they are coining the middlemen as all of the extra, unnecessary, in their words, bulk that makes our products so unnecessarily expensive. So you see that in mattresses, you see that in bedding, you see this in clothing with brands like Quince. You see this all over the place, but it's another example of how these businesses are not simply saying we are offering you a lower cost alternative, but actually turning you against whatever that alternative is by saying, not only are we cheaper and just as good of quality, if not better, but those other guys, they're just trying to steal from you. They don't actually have to mark them up as high, and we're going to give it to you for a much more affordable cost. So it's playing on much deeper emotions that is very motivating for a customer, especially if they are trying to decide between a brand that is their longtime go-to that they have shopped from repeatedly, or if they're going to try something new from a brand that they don't have direct experience with, that they can't go into a store and look at it and touch it and interact with it. They're needing to have a higher level of trust, a higher level of interest, and a higher level of motivation in order to buy from these brands. And so these companies are utilizing all the different tools that they can in order to create a more compelling message. And an enemy is a great way of doing that. So how do you actually find your brand enemy? What are the steps that you need to take in order to figure out where you might be able to add in some antagonism to strengthen your marketing message? The first thing that you need to do is you need to have clarity about who your brand is and what your brand values are. Because if you don't understand that, then you're not going to be able to find those more emotionally compelling, conflict-ridden areas to play off of when you are trying to identify who the enemy is. So if you're just choosing an enemy at random, or it doesn't have that deep conviction behind it, it's not going to be as powerful. So if we look back at e.l.f., we see, if you go to their website, you see how they are talking about really their commitment is to making beauty accessible for everybody. And of course, one of the things that would get in the way of that is overpriced makeup that is not really accessible and available to people who don't have huge budgets to be spending on makeup every month. So that is a way of being able to connect their values into something that is more pointed at a foe, and then using that to make really strong marketing choices. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper into what your value proposition is and what that should look like, I recommend that you check out my USP and value proposition video, which I will link in the eye and down below. Once you've figured out what your value proposition and what your values are, the next step is to figure out what threatens or stands in the way of achieving that. So your values give you that mission, but your mission is not going to be unhindered. There are going to be things that are getting in your way as you are heading off to try to make that vision a reality and to bring those values into the world. For some reason in my mind, when I am thinking about this, and even when I was planning this video, I was imagining Candyland, that board game, Candyland, if you're familiar with it, and how you're going along the way and you have the good, you have Princess Lolly and Queen Frostine, and then you have the bad guys that you just kind of hit at random, and you can get stuck in the molasses swamp, for example. And it's not necessarily that they're evil, but it's just the way the cookie crumbled. And that's kind of maybe more lighthearted way of looking at this, is that you're going to have both people that, or causes or whoever that is going to be aligning with you. And then there are others that for one reason or another are going to be getting in the way, that are going to be creating conflict and preventing you from being able to get to the finish line. And so once you know your values, think about and really get creative and go ahead and brainstorm, what are all of the things that might be standing in the way of achieving this? And what then, once you have that list, is going to be really compelling to your customers. So that means that you need to be clear about who your customers are. You want to have a customer avatar. I can't talk about that enough. If you are not familiar with a customer avatar is, be sure to check out that video that goes into more depth, but you need to have that clarity. And then the last piece is thinking about what kind of story are you telling? So there's something called story archetypes, or essentially different types of story categories, and there really aren't that many of them. I believe most people would agree that there are roughly 7 different story archetypes, and you don't have to commit to just one. But those different types of stories are going to be how you position yourself against your enemy, or how that enemy is going to come into play, and then how you're going to be talking about that and engaging with that in your various pieces of marketing. So I am planning on doing a video that goes into more depth about what these different types of stories are. However, you do want to be thinking about what the relationship is between the enemy and the customer, and how, again, reminding yourself that the enemy is not against you as the business. The enemy is against the values and your customers' values and your ability jointly to be able to tackle that. So going back again to this example of e.l.f., e.l.f. is not saying we have this enemy of luxury beauty. They're saying you as the customer have this enemy of luxury beauty who is trying to steal your hard-earned money, and you don't have to pay that much in order to feel and look great. So you see, it's a subtle shift, but it's really important when you're getting into these more advanced types of marketing techniques to make sure that you are positioning things in the correct way, always centering the customer and then building off of that. So brand enemies can be very powerful. So powerful that they do need to be used with caution. I just want to reiterate that one more time. You don't want to use this in a way that's going to be overly polarizing or creating hateful feelings. That is taking things too far to the extreme. But when used in a really thoughtful, nuanced way, brand enemies can be an invaluable asset that you have to be able to make your marketing more effective, to drive deeper relationships with your customers, to increase customer loyalty, to make people want to be brand evangelists, and to really take things to the next level. So let me know what you think. Do you use brand enemies in your marketing? Do you have any good examples of brand enemies in action? Drop them in the comments. And if you feel so inclined, give this video a like, subscribe, do all the things, and watch whatever YouTube is recommending to you next. In the meantime, thank you so much, and I will see you hopefully momentarily in the next video. Bye.